Welcome to another exciting episode of Bats, Balls and Banter, your ultimate destination for all things cricket. Cricket is more than just a game. It's a passion that unites millions across the globe. Here at Bats, Balls and Banter, we're dedicated to bringing you closer to the action, the stories and the personalities that make cricket the fascinating sport that it is. I'm your host, Kevin Pattenden. Grab your bat, hold on to your balls, settle in, and let's dive into the banter. On today's episode, we have an incredibly special guest, my brother Alan. Alan has not only played both football and cricket at a county level, but also pursued a career in mental health, where he's been open about his own personal journey. Today we're diving into some powerful topics like choosing cricket over football, the impact of losing our brother Paul, and how cricket has played a role in his life as both an outlet and a form of therapy. We'll hear from Alan on how he made the big decision to stick with cricket, what his funniest moments on the field have been, and how his take on how mental health is treated in sport. He'll also share how he overcame some of his biggest personal challenges and offer advice to young cricketers on managing their mental health while chasing their dreams. Hey, this conversation promises to be heartfelt, inspiring and filled with plenty of banter, so stay tuned. So just before the break, we was talking about Paul and how cricket was a release and sport in general is a release. But hey, look, I think we also mentioned just before we finished about this trip to Barbados. Now, I know just through being around the house at the time you came back, but our listeners don't know. Please tell us about you being a superstar in the Barbados National Stadium.
Dear. Right, okay then. So April 1988.
Wow.
A group of us, roughly around 30 people, majority lads with one or two partners and wives. We went to Barbados for a whole month. And
on a cricket tour, was it originally? Or?
Well, it was cricket. It was cricket and football. But we went to Hull Town, Barbados. So let's say we were super confident people, most of us, or came across that way, most of us, because I've done a lot of acting as such, and not necessarily on the stage. But anyway, we went to Barbados, and we might have fabricated a little bit of a story, in as much as obviously we were young, outgoing, quite loud. And we were quite smartly dressed one night in a nightclub, and we were asked who we were, where we were from. And without really thinking, we told one or two people that we were Nottinghamshire County Cricket Club on tour. And once you've said that, A, it's funny, but B, you've got to carry it on.
Yeah, that's true. Did you all look like first-class cricketers, may I add? I'm trying to think.
No.
So there was players and support staff then, shall we say?
Yes, I mean we had a whole range of people go, friends of friends, and it was a mixture of football and cricket. So there was most of us played both sports, but there was one or two who weren't interested in cricket, but they played football and vice versa. And so once we fabricated this story of us being Nottinghamshire County Cricket Club on tour, we had to stick with it, really. And, luckily we got a very good reception. And we played one or two games of cricket. But actually, we ended up, during that time, playing a lot of football. Ending up one night, we were playing in the Barbados National Stadium against the Barbadian under-21 team, I think.
Wow.
And it was in the papers, on the telly. There was quite a large crowd there. And, we knew we wouldn't be able to. These are under-21 proper footballers, shall I say.
These want to be superstars.
Yeah, so I was in goal. Then we played 9 across the back. And then our lone striker was a chap called Phil Chester. And we actually drew 2-2 with them. And we basically let them get to the 18-yard box and then kicked them, to be honest.
Yeah, the way forward.
But of course, our defence was that we were Nottinghamshire County Cricket Club. We were just playing a bit of football as well. But we were like, I remember I had some Sondico gloves. I don't even know. I don't know if they come. Yeah, I don't know if they still exist. But I got people begging for me gloves.
Did they ask you to sign them? They should.
Yeah.
They did.
So signed them and gave these gloves to this lad, and I don't know what happened to them. Surely they're not framed and still on his wall, but
possibly to this day they never know who you really were.
No,
was Pete Harrison on that tour?
Pete was on that tour.
Well, what position did Pete play? Was there a bar?
I think he was social secretary. I do believe. I mean, names straight off the top of my head: Nigel Hall, Chris Hall, Graham Cordwell. Sadly deceased. Like Graham Ackroyd, Jeremy Free, Phil Chester, and if I've forgotten anybody, it's because it's just trying to come off the top of my head. But and then we had a couple of lads. I mean, one lad, Barry
Bannon, the Wednesday Messi. No,
okay. It wasn't. It was more like Barry Chuckle than Barry Bannon, to be honest. But this lad just went. He didn't play football or cricket. He just went to Barbados with us. But just driving around the island on mini mokes and such a great time. And of course, I mean, somebody's got to do it. But we had to spend 5 days in Bridgetown watching West Indies play Pakistan, and I mean it was so terrible. But even then, we got in the national newspaper. I mean, again, if Nigel's listening to this, we made a bit of a banner. Pakistan weren't our favourite cricket team at the time, and we made a banner. And Nigel will be able to tell you word for word, but we were on the back pages of the Barbados paper saying, a group of bronzed English supporters were going wild whenever, when West Indies got a wicket, and we had
that in the heyday of West Indies cricket, would it back then as well?
Oh, absolutely.
Not like the definitely. Current team, but in them days, in the 80s, they had
it was fantastic.
Not quite as good as the 70s, obviously, with some of those players.
No,
but the 80s was still a fair. Courtney Walsh, Ambrose, Lara.
Oh yeah, Patrick Patterson.
Richie
Gus
Richardson.
Logie, Dujon Richardson. Yeah.
Wow.
And of course, for Pakistan was like the Imran Khans, Javed Miandads of this world,
legends of the cricket.
Absolutely.
And I suppose that trip then really to Barbados, turned out to be a blast by all accounts, which is what you really went for as a group of guys, and yes. Later on in life, it gives you some funny stories to tell, but. Which is brilliant, and life. I say to my children, life's all about creating memories, and you should, in years to come, just be able to recall some of these things. Yeah. But what else then? What else on the cricket field? Is there anything? What's the funniest or most bizarre thing that happened to you during a cricket match, or even a training session? I remember once. It wasn't funny at the time. I remember once in the nets at Retford when they were up in the top corner there. I was coming through, and I used to be down there all the time with wanting to be involved, and it was at the time that Jamie Boville was pretty impressive, and I don't find this funny, but it was bizarre. I went to bat towards the end. Everybody had a bat, and and I'm like, come on, and Jamie, bowl it, and ridiculous, the fastest thing I'd ever faced. And don't get me wrong, left arm coming round. And he was, and he
sharp,
put it down. Especially for my age group who'd never faced against that. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying he was the quickest bowler that ever bowled, but for that was a bizarre moment. I'll never forget that top right hand side, nets up at the top, two lanes. Everybody was up there. I went into bat, and in comes a young Jamie Boville, who probably at that time was on the Notts radar.
I'd imagine so, definitely.
He definitely did some net bowling, I think, for the England team, didn't he?
Oh, did he? I didn't realise.
I think I may be wrong, but I thought he had. But that was a bizarre moment. So, have you got any? Well,
it's funny. It's funny you should mention Jamie, and I earlier mentioned Nigel Hall, because this is a story about Jamie's brother and Nigel's brother. So again, you have to think back, dear listener, to a time where helmets weren't. They went around. They weren't helmets, and bless him, Chris came on a Friday night and had a helmet, and we were netting on the Friday night. Chris goes into bat. Oh, Chris has got a helmet, right? Yeah, okay. Well, whatever. That we've seen people on the telly with them, and it'll be, he was the first one to get one. So Chris put the helmet on, went down the other end of the net, and Chris Boville came in and bowled, and the first ball that Chris received Chris hit him on the toe, broke his toe badly, and Chris didn't play for a few weeks.
So he spent all this money on a helmet, and his first was a broken toe.
Poor Chris was distraught. Anybody who knows Chris knows the passion that chap had, or has. And poor Chris. I mean, we smiled at the time. We found it funny at the time, and I guess one or two of these stories are a little bit. You had to be there in a way, and everybody listening will have one of those dressing room stories that once you get out the dressing room, it's not half as funny as you think. But I've played with and against so many characters over the years, and I mean, Roy Wilson.
Radio Roy? Is that Radio Roy?
That's him. Well, once we were playing on a Wednesday night for the EMEB, East Midlands Electricity Board.
Didn't you have a song? Would you like to share your song, or do you want to move on from that for the sake of the listeners? EMEB Retford. Now, that's not very funny, but when you're in Cambridge and you and Nigel are singing it, and then when you get to the ground, he's throwing a cricket ball at me and I'm heading it. Yeah. Yes, heading a cricket ball. Without the helmet.
Without a helmet, while singing EMEB Retford. So funny. And I imagine people are going, what? Yeah. But again, please put yourself in the moment.
Yeah, exactly.
Put yourself in the moment where you're having a bit of a release and you're young.
And you're having a good time, and that's important. Yeah. But Radio Roy, was he the opening bowler for the EMEB?
Yes. Now, Roy, one day he's at mid-on, and a player skied the ball Roy's way, and so Roy proceeds to take off his glasses. He bends down and places them on the ground. He takes an extremely good catch, rolls the ball back to the bowler, and then puts his glasses back on, as though nothing's happened. I mean, how can you not sort of smile at that, be amazed at that? Now Roy didn't particularly strike you as being able to play cricket, and you would probably declare before he went into bat. But wow, could that man bowl a wicked in-swinger? He really could.
Well, he had a strange action, if I remember.
He did. Did he come off the wrong foot? Lance Cairns-ish.
Yeah, he was sort of wrong foot and through the wicket, wasn't he?
I mean, Roy didn't know what he was doing, so no other batsman would have a clue.
Yeah.
Why
was he Radio Roy? Is that? I never know. This could be a really good time to ask. I only ever heard of him called Radio
Roy, but I can't remember why. I mean, if you had a phone in, then maybe you could be asking people to phone you right now.
Maybe if you are listening to this podcast at some stage in the future, and you know why Roy Wilson was known as Radio Roy, then please put in the comments on the Spotify.
I would like to know, actually.
I once heard, but I don't know how true, he was a very big Forest fan. Was he a Forest fan?
Yes, he was.
And I once heard that, he would always have a radio to his ear listening to Nottingham Forest.
That sounds about right.
But I don't know how true that is. So either if you do hear this podcast in the future and you do know, either tell me I'm right or I'm wrong, and if I'm wrong, tell me why. That'd be really good to know. But
Yeah, and I think the other the other story, again, going back to Nigel, and has said about the heading the cricket balls. I mean, I still call this fella Skipper to this day. I first met him at Retford Cricket Club, and I just cannot tell you how much fun we had together. A supremely talented bowler as a youngster who could also bat. He turned himself into an opening bat and scored runs for fun in Basset Law League. Now, he was absolutely light years in front of me, talent-wise, but I think I gave him a good run for his money off the field, home or abroad. I think the best thing to say is we were never far from the action.
No.
And I know to this day that the stories still go round, particularly Retford Cricket Club. And when my son went to play at Retford, immediately the stories, Adam was told a lot of stories about myself. But, my partner there was Nigel.
Yeah. It's quite funny, actually, because as you know, because you came down, but I took a tour inside to Retford quite recently. And Nige, as an umpire as he is now, and chairman of the Premier League. I do believe he is. Yes. Yeah. But he's an umpire, and otherwise, I would have asked him to have been involved. But it was the reserve day for the Premier League.
That's right.
I think so. He could, anyway. Yes. Cut a long story short, he came down, and my lad was there. So my son was playing, as you well know, and sort of Nigel and my lad was getting together and chatting, and Nige was giving him some advice that Henry's taken on board, because he's relayed it to me, so he definitely listened to what Nigel was saying. And you will do worse, by the way, than listen to advice from Nigel Hall, definitely, who as a bowler that got called, I'm sure he won't mind me saying, got called for throwing, which debatable, but stopped his career at Northampton. I think he then turned himself into your opening bat, and not many people can say they've done that. No. But that said, I go back to your point about your son and the stories and things. I heard him, recalling about, your uncle, we did this, your uncle, don't you, he might seem a quiet one on the outside, but let me tell you, I've got stories that could keep you here for a month, let me tell you.
Yeah. So, but again, a lot of that, Kev, was a release. It was a release from poor mental health, and it was an opportunity for me to try and enjoy a moment, because I didn't enjoy much, and this may well be a surprise to anybody who used to play with me, who doesn't sort of know that I struggled big time, and the comedic side of it all was very, very important to me.
Yeah, I think that unless you really did know, then you did very well in hiding that, and I think thousands of people. I'm not dismissing you as an individual with that issue, but thousands do the very same thing. And I think with your background in mental health, what's your take? Going back now to thousands suffering, and as we've known over the years, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Trescothick, Hoggard, have all suffered in some way, shape or form. But with your background in mental health as your daily job, really, I suppose, what's your take on how mental health is treated in sports? And given that this is a cricket podcast related to cricket, particularly in cricket, would you have a view on that? I think mental health in all sports really has gained increasing recognition in recent years. I think many organisations are sort of beginning to prioritise the well-being of athletes, and offering them resources like sort of counselling and mental health training. And I think that, a lot of footballers get a lot of finance advice and training. And I think it can only help if big sporting institutions, big clubs, get involved more and publicise it more. There is still a stigma. But, if we can encourage open conversations about mental health and really we can have helplines and we can have organisations. But, you're talking of worldwide football clubs and the like. If they're promoting good mental health, then I think
the challenges. I mean, the challenges will remain, like pressure to perform, and there is a culture of toughness in a lot of male sport, particularly, and I think that sometimes stops people from seeking help. But it is certainly getting better. And you mentioned a couple of people there. I mean, my mind goes to Gary Speed.
Gary Speed in the football world. Yeah.
Robert Enke, the German goalkeeper, and in a sport that both myself and you are interested in, ice hockey. There's been Wade Belak and Rick Ripien, the American ice hockey players. But we've had Graham Thorpe very recently.
Graham Thorpe, absolutely. Yeah.
David Bairstow back in the day, Jonathan Trott.
And others, by the way, and
oh my goodness,
I don't want to go into detail too much, but a young chap from Worcester not that long ago. So
right, yeah. So I do think things are getting better, and I think a lot of sportsmen now and well, I don't know about you sort of actors and musicians of this world. It's not really my bag, but a lot are happy to let the world know really of their struggles, and I suppose the stigma is becoming less acute. But there is a lot of evidence that mental health challenges can be one of the more negative consequences of a life of high performance, I guess.
Yeah.
I know there was a study by the BBC State of Sport investigation in, I think, 2018, and a lot of former professional sports people have concerns about their own mental or emotional well-being
in the future. And I think that's a real valid point that you mentioned. You talk about the professional clubs, the elite level, up to international level, and they are obviously your top echelons of sports people. But if I'm to be brutally honest, I don't see much at the amateur level. Now, maybe it all does come down from the top, and if we see people talking about it, of those people that we admire and follow, then it will make it easier if somebody was struggling to talk about it. But I'm still not sure or convinced at the grassroots level it's talked about enough. I'm not sure that it would be, and I'll use Retford as an example purely because that was my club, not because there's any connection to any mental health issues, but I'm not sure you still would openly talk about those things in a club environment.
I think you're right, and I think that and that's why there's still a lot of work to be done on mental health, and we have to encourage men in particular to talk. And I've admitted that for many years I hid it. So well that people thought I was probably the life and soul of the party.
Yeah, but that was the cover, wasn't it? That
was the absolute cover.
Yeah.
But I used sport as a way to get away from that. I wasn't going to go on a Saturday, sit with the lads and tell them that I was struggling mentally. And maybe a lot of people, use sport or a hobby as the cover and don't talk about it. But it would be great. I don't know. I'm not involved in club cricket now. It'd be great if all clubs had. I'm sure there must be some form of welfare officer.
I think if I'm right in thinking, again, for our area, Nottinghamshire, I'm 99% certain that Nottinghamshire as a county has a welfare officer. Right. But I'm not sure that all the clubs in the Basset Law League or the North Notts League, etc., have their own. And maybe it's not something that is ever going to happen. Maybe it's more of a societal thing that it is okay to say, I'm going to give it my best, but I'm struggling today, lads. You are listening to the podcast Bats, Balls and Banter. Please like, subscribe and share with your fellow enthusiasts. Hey, don't forget to leave a review, and your support keeps the banter going. So, welcome back. We're talking with my brother, as we say, Alan Pattenden, and we've gone through lots of subjects from sort of football and cricket and mental health and funny moments on the field, even taking your glasses off to take a catch and putting them back on. Crazy moments in time. But I also know, Alan, before we just come on to finish with a little bit of advice for athletes moving forward. So let's recoil some more stories. I mean, there must be much to talk about. I know you've been on cricket tours. We've rubbed shoulders with in our day what were superstar cricketers. Probably lots of people won't have heard of them. And we mentioned Derek Randall at the very beginning. I know we have stories, there, and obviously used to take us to Central Avenue to what?
Central Avenue. Well, that was quite surreal, Kev, to be honest. And I know it happened to you separately to me, but I'm for anybody who knows Retford, I'm walking down, just walked down Spittal Hill, down towards the bus stops, which were in and around Cannon Square, and this car pulls up, and window is wound down because there was no electric as such windows, and he leans across and winds down this window, and this chap says, "Are you going to workshop, Al?" And it's Derek Randall. And yes, Derek, yeah, I'm going to watch you for Notts against Yorkshire. Jump in then, mate. And I'm sat with Derek Randall, Nottinghamshire, England cricketer, going to Central Avenue, and obviously he says, like, I can't take you home. I don't know, whether I'll be able to do that. But the reason why was that his girlfriend at the time, his wife to be Elizabeth, their family lived 4 doors away from us, as you'll recall. So we again, you'll remember this. We lived on a corner plot, so our house had the biggest garden, and Derek, a bit like the Pied Piper, would go round on the houses and get the kids out playing cricket, and he would use our garden as the field.
That's his cricket field, yeah.
And this may seem really strange to some people, but we would have cricket matches on our street, organised by Derek Randall, by going and knocking on the doors of all the kids. Because, he was there quite a lot. The longer the relationship with Elizabeth went on, the more he was there. And
it's quite strange, really, isn't it, how times have changed? Because, I don't know, could you imagine that happening these days? I don't know if you came or not, to be honest, but he took a load of us swimming one day. He was off to the old Retford baths, as it was then, not a sports centre, but the old baths, and as many as he could get in the car, we all went off swimming. And and he paid for us. Yes, he did. He
paid for us all, took us swimming,
but at no stage was there anything other than that moment. This day and age, I'm not sure that could happen. But anyway,
probably our superstars of this day wouldn't expose themselves to that.
That's true. That's true.
But it was just pure joy for us kids, being in the company, and for us too as cricketers, as sort of cricketers as well.
For anybody who knows me, of the 3 disciplines, and I'm no doubt there'll be comments that I'm no good at any of them, but of the 3 disciplines, batting, bowling and fielding, it is fair to say, and I wouldn't take offence if you said that fielding was probably my weakest point. And the one time, as you recall, he picked you up, took you to Central Avenue, and as you said, he on a separate occasion, I was walking down to the buses the very same way on a different day, and he, Kev, are you going? Yeah, in you get. He said, but there's one, I've got one ask when we get there. It's like, okay, Derek, fire away. He said, I'll go into the changing room, I'll put some training gear on, and at the old Central Avenue, it's not like it now, I don't think, but in them days, it was quite a nice, it was like an out ground, wasn't it, for Notts? I think they use Welbeck now, which is a cracking facility, by the way. But
isn't it?
Workshop in them days was a nice outground for them, and at the back of the pavilion that was, I don't know if it still is, but that was a big field. And he said, I've got one ask, and I will go inside, I'll put my training gear on, and I'll come out, and I want you to help me field. It's like, yeah, okay, Derek, no problem. Now, if you can imagine me helping arguably the greatest fielder England's ever produced, fielding practice before a game. He came out, basically brought one stump and a bag of balls, and he stuck the stump in the ground, and all I had to do was roll the ball. It wasn't very onerous, even I could manage that. I had to roll the ball, and basically he would run in, pick it up one hand, and aim at the stumps. Not every time, but I don't know. 90% were direct hit of one stump, and that to me was just, that experience was amazing. Didn't really matter, I don't think, who it was, although we knew Derek, and it made it more comfortable.
Yeah,
but just to be there, the guy who's probably the worst fielder you'll ever come across, standing slip because he just can't move anywhere else, helping arguably the greatest England fielder.
It's just, as I say, it's quite surreal, isn't it, really? And people say to me, or I see bits and bobs on Facebook, who's your greatest ever sporting hero? Just Derek Randall. It's never wavered. It never will waver. That man brought so much joy and fun to the game. Outwardly, I'm forever going on YouTube and watching clips of him, and with his run outs and his, in fact, I was watching the other day when he nearly Boycott run him out at Trent Bridge, and I was watching on YouTube the other day when Derek, I think he had something like 20 to get in the last over against Essex, and he got something like 18 or something like that, and I think he was poorly treated by the authorities. Well, from what I remember, but
I think if I can just comment on that point that you make, and it reverts right back to the very beginning of this conversation, Al, is that in your day, and so not for me, but you had grammar school, and when you go back to Derek's time of playing, the public school boy, the grammar school boy. That's what the England hierarchy wanted. They didn't want a normal Joe Public, run-of-the-mill character, as was seen by them, in their side. Unfortunately, he was too good that they couldn't pick him. But he was badly treated because he wasn't plum in your mouth, yes sir, no sir, three bags full sir sort of character. And I respect him highly for that also.
Yeah, greater aficionados of the game will know more than me, but what has stuck with me, and it might be wrong, but what has stuck with me is the fact that it was a straight decision between him and Mike Gattin. And I might be wrong, but that's how I remember it. And Gattin, playing for Middlesex, had quite a few failures. I'm not saying he wasn't a bad cricketer, but, he had quite a few failures, and he seemed to get more of a chance than Derek. As I say, people better than me. Yeah, people better than me will know that. But I can quite think that Derek wouldn't have had an argument with Shakur Rana. I think he would have probably just stood there, hands on hips, sun hat on.
He would have made a fun joke about something.
And
been dealt with better.
Derek, to me, would be every boy's dream at that stage. Just such a good all-round person, and dare we say, knowing him personally, and that was at that time in that one capacity. I just thought that bloke was amazing. Yeah, and to this day remains a hero of mine.
And I will wholeheartedly 100% agree with everything you just said there. Maybe subconsciously, it's why cricket became my chosen sport over rugby, or maybe I just got hurt too much in rugby. But that Derek involvement, that role model that he was. That drive to be a Derek, although I never ever was going to be, but that without a doubt, he was a. And let's not turn this into the Derek Randall Appreciation Society. There's already one of them exists, no doubt. But he was a fantastic guy who was down to earth, run of the mill, and just a thoroughly nice bloke. Oh, and a bloody good cricketer. But you've met more than Derek Randall, haven't you?
Well, yeah. Again, a claim to fame. I don't know if that's quite the right word, but I was also a Class 2 football referee at one stage. Class 1 are the ones you see on telly, so I was doing okay. And I refereed in the Notts Alliance League in Nottingham, and one of the fellas who was manager of one of the teams, I got speaking to him and I said, I play a bit of cricket. Oh, he says, I run a cricket team as well. We're called Chandos Old Boys. And I thought, well, very interesting. No idea who you are. But anyway, he contacted me later on in the season. He said, any chance you could come and play cricket for us? We're a bit short. Would you play? I said, yeah, I've no idea who Chandos Old Boys are, no idea where you play, but give me the directions, I'll come and play. And to cut quite a long story short, and I actually went with a lad called Wayne Harrison. You mentioned Pete earlier.
Yeah. Thoroughly nice family.
Oh, absolutely. The bloke said to me, any chance you could bring a friend? So I contacted Wayne, and Wayne came out with me. And I'm sat in this changing room in Nottingham for a team I don't know. I don't know what the standard of cricket is, but I soon realised it must be okay, because on one side of me is Chris Cairns, New Zealand and Notts, and on the other side of me is Dave Callaghan, Blythe and South Africa.
Yeah.
And wow. So I'm just looking at these two like in just, wow, how is this happening? And I think this team actually probably, in one sense of the word, just got the best players they could, the mercenaries and people, contacts and friends of friends. And I remember there was a lad called Jitish Jani, who I played with at schoolboy level. He was playing in this team, and just unreal. Again, it's Chris Cairns. It's Lance Cairns' son. Chris Cairns in his own right.
Well, because I think he's on a road to recovery now.
Yes, he's improving.
You mentioned Chris Cairns, and obviously a dear late friend of mine, Sav, as lots of people potentially listening with. Played first team cricket at Retford, as you know, for many years now. He was, talking to fielding, he was probably the closest to Derek Randall I've seen. He was amazing in the field, but he was also a good batter. Was Sav, but he used to recall to me that the Chris Cairns at Blythe was probably one of the fastest spells he's ever faced. And he talked. I can't remember the wicket keeper at Blythe now off the top of my head. Dave Donaldson, would it be?
It could be. Yeah, it might be Dave. I think Dave was a wicket keeper.
I can't remember exactly, but he says Cairns was coming in to run up to bowl, and he said, as I went to put my foot to the pitch, I heard it thud into the keeper's gloves. He said it was ridiculous. By the time I'd gone to literally put my foot to the pitch of the ball to defend it, because that's all I could do, thud as it hit the keeper's gloves. So
I remember
about Cairns.
The story I tell is quite an eye-opening one, as in I hit Andy Pick for 2 sixes. However, the truth is that Andy Pick was just playing with me. I was just jumping onto the front foot and padding him back and batting him back and occasionally hitting it, and more often than not missing it. And in 2 consecutive balls, he hit the shoulder of my bat. I went flying for 6. But I tend to miss that bit out when I'm telling people.
Yeah, you don't need to worry about the shoulder of the bat.
I always remember it. I always remember he was. They were playing on telly, and it was like Andy Pick, the medium pacer. Well, he was no medium pacer in my book. Nor was a chap called Mike Rindell, who I played against, a South African. Yeah, a South African, and he was playing for Mansfield Hosiery Mills or somebody like that. Some team out Mansfield way, and he were a bit sharp.
Yeah,
and you're playing club cricket, but you are playing against professionals and extremely good cricketers. I mean, Retford itself had some extremely good club cricketers.
What was they called him? Mick Hacker? No, not Mick Hacker. Pete Hacker. Pete Hacker
and Kenny Watson.
Weren't they pretty sharp by all accounts?
Oh yes, I mean I didn't face them. Again, if you had Nigel on here, he'd be telling you exactly. There's been a lot of good pros in the Bassett Law League throughout all the teams, but Retford, and I played some games or some years at Wheatley.
What
and
about
they had
Milton
some good pros
with Bickle?
Andy Bickle. Yes,
now,
exactly.
Apparently he was sharp.
Apparently so. Yes, And I think his figures proved it.
Yeah,
I suppose the thing is sometimes that they're too good for club cricketers, aren't they? But,
yeah, well, I mean, I think Andy was on his way up at that stage, wasn't he? He was he was over here from Australia playing, like, lots of cricketers travel the world before they make it. To Retford's just had a pro this year who's got 1,000 runs, and whether we'll see him at high level or not, who knows? But before they really make it, then he was there, and Andy Bickle was one of them. I mean, I've
been very, very lucky to play with some extremely good club players and one or two professionals.
Yeah, I think my highlight, although we've talked about Derek Randall and playing in the park with him and in the garden and all those things, I think the highlight for me is Brett Lee. Is playing with Brett Lee, and first time I met him was on a tour to Montenegro last year. It would be now, and what, again, a thoroughly nice guy, and he, in no way was he bowling at his pace that he can bowl, but he was just such a nice guy. And maybe that's a thing about cricket and other sports. Even the elite sports people are just thoroughly nice guys as well. But look, just before we come to a final question, I just mentioned a tour there to Montenegro, and I know you used to go on quite a few tours, maybe with the previously mentioned MEB, and a faked car crash. Yeah. Do I recall a faked car crash? Oh, shock horror.
No, I don't quite know how you know about that, young man. You must have done your research.
Thank you very much.
Yes, so we were on MEB. Were on tour in Cambridge. I do believe a village called Stoke-on-Key. Anyway, nice hotel, and off the main road, there's a bit of a road down to the hotel itself. We're playing one game a day for 5 days. We played an away game. We were coming back in convoy back to the hotel, and 2 or 3 cars were a bit further in front of the last car. So I guess you've got to say, not particularly proud of this in one respect, but returning there after the game, some of the lads staged an impromptu incident where they parked their cars at different angles to each other. One opened the door and sort of was laying out of the door. One was laying slumped on the steering wheel. One was in a field just slightly off the road. And the last car came along, and they obviously pulled up, quite rightly concerned. 2 or 3 of the lads went to the supposed injured parties, and it was, obviously quite obvious that they were okay. However, one lad took a step back, surveyed the scene, and rang the emergency services. So you can probably guess the rest. From there, we are now soon, within minutes, confronted by fire engines, ambulance, police. We were so lucky to get away with stern words. And you got to think this was early 80s, so I don't think you'd be anywhere near as lucky today. And rightly so, at the time, hijinks, and so funny, not so in hindsight, but it's, you put yourself in the moment. So funny. And again, the time in Northumberland, I was batting with Richard
Riverdale
Atkin.
Hall, is that?
Yes, Riverdale Hall. And we had some really good tours up there. And
John Cocker? Was it John Cocker?
John Cocker, yes. And I keep saying I want to go back up there, but I've never really made it back up there, but I probably will do one day. Again, you've got to say, cricket tour, 80s, totally different. But anyway, I'm batting with Richard Atkin. Poor lad. I called him for a single. I'm batting quite well. And I call him for a single, and halfway down the track, I just deliberately tripped him up. I stuck my bat out, tripped him up. Poor fella, he's run out by 11 yards. I think he's flat out on the floor. He's looking gone out at me. The opposition are stunned. Everybody's stunned. Why did I do it? I don't know. Don't know to this day.
Well, again, at the moment, hijinks, funny, you're on a tour. Richard was a character in his own right. He was a teacher, was he a sports teacher?
Yes, I think he was a teacher, yeah. And actually, He was in Estonia not so long ago, I think.
Really?
on the advice of myself. I think he went for a long weekend or something. But anyway, we digress. But
okay.
yeah, poor Richard. And he's reminded me of it since then. And why I did it, I don't know. But it was funny.
It was funny at the time.
I'm sorry,
That's
Richard,
why you did it at the time.
So,
and I think. Go on.
So many good times, really. So many good times with teammates, and really a game never passed us by without something happening.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot to be said to that. A lot to be said to, as I've said, a while ago about creating memories and things. And final question, then we'll have to bring this to a close, and we'll probably have to split this into two parts because we could talk forever, and I'm sure there's lots we've still not covered. Well, I know there's lots we've still not covered, but maybe we'll have to get another one further down the line and revisit all the other.
Yeah, happy to.
But just to sort of finish with then, and so what we've talked about memories, we've talked about meeting high-profile cricketers, we've talked about how it makes us feel and the good stuff around that. We've talked about funny times, tours, and we've talked about mental health issues. And therefore, I think. I don't want to bring it back to that or finish on a down point, but what advice would you give cricketers today? I suppose the youngsters coming through, and especially about managing mental health while chasing their dreams, and lots of. And
that's it, and it's quite real to us with your son playing cricket and developing, young Henry developing. So in some respects, it's with him in mind that I've sort of thought about this, and I think the 6 points. Point one: prioritise balance. Remember that cricket is just one part of your life, so you've got to make time for hobbies. You must make time for friends and family, so that you can maintain a healthy balance. It's not all just about playing sport. 2, talk about it. Don't hesitate to share your feelings with your teammates, your friends, your coach, anybody. You'd be surprised how many other people have felt the same pressure and have got the same issues as yourself. 3, set realistic goals. Focus on your own personal improvement rather than just the outcomes. Celebrate small victories like taking a wicket or mastering a new shot. And even if it's in practice, so what? Be pleased. Enjoy that moment. 4, embrace failure. Everybody has off days. Even the pros. They're going to get bowled first ball. They're going to drop a catch. Keep a sense of humour about the game and about yourself, really. These things happen. 5, practice mindfulness. It's something I have done in more recent years. Techniques like meditation can help clear your mind. Just even taking a few deep breaths before a big moment can make a difference. Just take a step back before you take a step forward. And 6, have fun. I mean, at the end of the day, remember why you love cricket. Enjoy the game for what it is. Don't take the game too seriously. Don't take yourself too seriously. And sometimes the best memories come from the games where nothing goes right, really. So I think ultimately, if you balance ambition and self-care, your cricket journey will become more enjoyable and more sustainable, really. And that's it, Kev.
Look, what a great way to finish this that hour that we've just had together, reminiscing the 6 points there of helping young athletes and potential cricketers in the future. Look, we've touched lots of subjects there, Al, from cricket over football and mental health issues and how you've overcome them yourself, and some big names that we know together through the years, and ultimately finishing off with some funny stories on cricket tours. It's been an absolute pleasure that last hour, and we'll probably split that into 2 podcasts now, but I'd like to get you back in the future also, and we can maybe reminisce some more. But Al, for now, thank you very much indeed.
Absolute pleasure, Kev. I've loved every minute of it. It's been great to have a chat. Nice to remind ourselves of a life where there was no internet. You could go swimming for 10 pence, and life was quite a bit different to what it is today. And I guess one final piece of advice really to fielders is, make your mind up. You've either got your glasses on or your glasses off, but don't put them down on the field.
What a bombshell piece of information. Thanks, mate.
Ta-da.
This podcast series is sponsored by Cricket Finder, the world's fastest growing cricket networking platform, bringing clubs, teams and players together from all over the world. Use the code POD24 to receive your subscription discount at cricketfinder.com. So thank you all for tuning in to Bats, Balls and Banter. And don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for more exciting episodes. Until next time, take care and keep the cricket spirit alive.